In Nibiru's loop, 5 things were carefully looked at. What atmospheres they had were closely looked at by watching them and using celestial chariots. The findings were surprising, and the discoveries were hard to understand. Nibiru's atmosphere breaching got worse from circuit to circuit. In the councils of the wise, people talked about cures and ways to bandage wounds with great interest. A new shield was tried to cover the planet, but it all fell back to the ground. The volcanoes that spewed ash were looked at in councils of the wise. The atmosphere was created by volcanoes spewing ash into the air, and it hurt when they stopped. Let people devise new ways to burp, and let volcanoes spew again, what one savants group said. All the kings could only tell how the feat could be done or what tools could be used. During Anshar's rule, the hole in the sky got bigger. There were no rains, the winds were more potent, and no springs were coming from the ground. There was a charge in the land that mothers' breasts were dry. There was trouble in the palace, and a charge spread. As his first wife, he married his half-sister Enshar, which was against the law of the seed. Bear of the Shahs, the lady was what people called Ninshar. Enshar had a son as a concubine, the firstborn son, a son she didn't give birth to. Ninshar's first wife and half-sister didn't have a son. By the law of succession, the throne went to the concubine's son. He was the 7th person to rule. His royal name was Du-Uru, which means in the dwelling place made. He was born in the house of concubines, not in the palace. Du-Uru chose a young woman from his youth to be his wife. He chose the first wife because he loved her, not because she was his daughter. Du-Uru was her royal name, which meant, "She who is by my side." There was a lot of confusion in the royal court. Sons didn't get to inherit, and wives weren't half-sisters. There was more and more suffering on the land. People became less fertile, and the fields forgot how full they used to be. There was no birth in the palace. Neither a son nor a daughter was born. 7 of An's children were kings, and then none of his children were on the throne. A child named Dauru was found at the palace gate, and the queen took him in as her son. In the end, Du-Uru adopted him as a son and made him his legal heir. His name, Lamu, means dryness. The princes were complaining in the palace, and there were also complaints in the Council of Councillors. In the end, Lamu took his place on the throne. Even though he wasn't An's son, he was the 8th king. In the councils of the wise, there were 2 ideas for how to heal the brace. One had to use a metal called gold. It was rare in Nibiru, but there was a lot in the hammered bracelet. It was the only thing that could be ground into the finest powder and stay in the air high above heaven. So, with more supplies, the hole would close up and protection would improve. Let there be celestial boats and a star fleet to bring gold to Nibiru. The other idea was to make weapons of terror that would make the ground shake and the mountains break apart. With missiles, the volcanoes can be attacked, their slumber is broken, their belching made worse, the atmosphere filled up, and the hole made to go away. Lamu was too weak to choose, but he knew what to do. One time around, Nibiru went around 2 shahs. Nibiru was added to the list. In the fields, things didn't get better. The atmosphere was not fixed by volcanic farts. A 3rd shah went by, and a 4th was added to the total. No gold was gained. There was a lot of fighting on the land, but there wasn't enough food or water. There was no longer unity in the land, and accusations were everywhere. Intelligent people came from the royal court, and councillors rushed in and out. The king didn't care what they said. He only wanted advice from his wife, named Lahama. "If it's fate," she said, Let's ask the great creator of all to help the king. The only hope is to beg on the internet. The princes at the royal court were upset, and the king was accused of being stupid and irrational for making things worse instead of better. Weapons were taken out of the old storage places, and there was a lot of talk about starting a rebellion. The first person to take up arms was a prince in the royal palace. By making promises, he stirred up the other princes. His name was Alalu. "Lamu shouldn't be king anymore," he yelled. "Let decision supplant hesitation. Let's scare the king where he lives. Let's leave his throne empty." The princes listened to what he said and ran to the palace gate. They went like rushing water to the throne room, which had a small entrance. Alalu was after the king, who ran to the palace's tower. There was a fight in the tower, and Lamu fell to death. "No more Lamu," Alalu called out. Alalu ran to the throne room and sat on the throne as quickly as he could. He told everyone with joy that the king was dead. He made a king with no rights or counsel. Some people were content that Lamu had died, while others were saddened by what Alalu had done. This is the story of Alalu becoming king and going to earth. There was no longer unity in the land, and many people were upset with the king. Princes were upset in the palace, and councillors were upset in the council. Anu's place on the throne was passed on from father to son. Even Lamu the Eighth was called a son because he was adopted. Who was Alalu? Was he a firstborn or a legal heir? How could he take over? Wasn't he the one who killed the king? Alalu was brought before the seven who judge so that they could decide his fate. Alalu made his pleas to the seven who judge. Even though he was neither a legal heir nor a firstborn son, he was of royal blood. Before the judges he said, "I am from Anshagal. My ancestor was born to him by a concubine. His name was Alam. By Shah's count, Alam was the firstborn. The throne belonged to him, but the queen used her cunning to take away his rights. She made a law of the seed out of nothing, and her son became king. She took the kingship away from Alalu and gave it to her son. I followed Alalu's lineage. The seed of Anshagal is in me." The seven who judge paid attention to what Alalu said. They took the matter to the Council of Councillors to find out if it was true. The royal records were carefully read from the House of Records. Anu and Antu were the first king and queens. They had 3 sons but no daughters. Anki was the firstborn. He died on the throne and had no children. In his place, the middle son took the throne. His name was Anib. Anshagal was his first child and his throne. After him, the firstborn did not stay on the throne. The law of succession by the law of the seed was replaced by a new law. The firstborn was the son of a concubine, but the law said he didn't have the right to be king. Instead, Kishagal's son became king. This was because she was a half-sister of the king. The firstborn, the son of the concubine, was not written down in the history books. "Of him I am descended," Alalu cried out to the councillors. By the law of succession, he was the rightful king. "By the law of succession, I am now the rightful king." The councillors of Alalu hesitated before taking the truth oath that was asked of them. Alalu took the oath of life and death, and as king, he thought about what the council had to say. They called the elders and the princes together, and the decision was made before them. A young prince stood up from the group of princes. He had something to say about being king. He told the assembly that succession needs to be looked at again. "Even though I wasn't the firstborn or the queen's son, I came from pure seed. The essence of An is still in me, and no concubine has changed that." The words shocked the councillors, and they told the young prince to come closer. They asked what he was called. "It's Anu. I was named after my grandfather An." When they asked about his family tree, he told them about An's 3 sons. Enki was An's firstborn, but he died without a son or daughter. Anib was the middle son. He took the throne instead of Enki. He married Anib, who was the daughter of his younger brother. From that point on, the succession is written down in the history books. Who was that younger brother? One of the purest seed and the son of An and Antu? The counselors just looked at each other in shock. His name was Enugu, Anu told them. He was my great-great-grandfather. His wife Ninuru was his half-sister, and her firstborn son was named Inama. Seed and succession laws said that his wife was his half-sister, and she gave him a son. By law and seed, the generations kept coming from the same family. My parents named me Anu after our grandfather An. We have been kicked off the throne, but were not kicked off. An's pure seed, let Alalu be removed, let Anu be king, a lot of counselors yelled. Others gave advice. Let there be no fighting, and let unity win. They called Alalu to tell him what they had found. Alalu put his arm around Prince Anu and spoke to him in this way. Even though we have different parents, we both come from the same ancestor. Let's live in peace and help Nibiru return to plenty together. Let me keep the throne, and you take care of the next king. He said to the council, let Anu be crown prince. Let his son marry my daughter, and let the heirs unite. Let him be my successor. Anu bent down in front of the council. He said the following to the group. I will be Alalu's cupbearer and his heir apparent. As his bride, he will choose a son of mine or a daughter of his. That was the council's decision, written down in the royal records. In this way, Alalu stayed seated on the throne. He called on the wise people, geniuses, and commanders. He consulted and learned a lot that helped him decide. He permitted boats from the heavens to be built to find the gold in the hammered bracelet. The boats were crushed by the hammered bracelets, and none returned. Let the weapons of terror be used to cut open Nibiru, and let the volcanoes erupt again. He then gave an order. With weapons of terror, chariots in the sky were loaded with terror missiles and fired from the sky at volcanoes. The mountains moved as bright light and thunder exploded, and the valleys shook. There was a lot of happiness in the land, and there were hopes for plenty. Anu was in the palace for Alalu, who was in charge of the cups. He would bow at Alalu's feet and give Alalu the cup to drink from. Alalu was the king, and Anu worked for him as a servant. There was less joy in the land. The rain stopped, and the winds got more robust. The amount of gas that volcanoes blew out didn't get worse, and the hole in the atmosphere didn't get fixed. Nibiru's circuits kept going around in the sky. It got harder to handle the heat and cold from circuit to circuit. The people of Nibiru stopped respecting their king because he made things worse for them instead of better. Alalu stayed in his seat on the throne. The most powerful and wise prince, Anu, was standing before him. He would bow to Alalu's feet and give Alalu the cup to drink from. Alalu was the king of Nibiru for 9 times that were measured. In the 9th Shah, Alalu and Anu fought. Alalu challenged him to fight hand-to-hand with no clothes on. Anu said, let the winner be king. They fought in the public square. Doorposts and walls shook as they did so. Alalu bent his knee and fell on his chest to the ground. Alalu was defeated in battle, and Anu was hailed as king and taken to the palace. However, Alalu did not return to the palace. He sneaked away from the crowds because he feared doing what Lamu did. He quickly went to where the celestial chariots were, but no one knew. Alalu got into a chariot that could shoot missiles and shut the door behind him. He went into the front chamber and sat in the commander's chair. That which shows the way filled the chamber with a bluish glow. He woke up the firestones, and their humming sound was mesmerizing. He brought to life the chariot's great cracker, which was shining with a reddish light. Alalu from Nibiru got away in the celestial boat without anyone else knowing. Alalu set his course for a snowy earth. He chose his destination from the start by keeping it a secret. What the second part of this Akkadian tablet MC2894A says. Alalu's flight in a spacecraft that had nuclear weapons. He heads for the 7th planet, Ki, Earth. Why he thinks gold will be on Earth. The history of the solar system, the water, and the gold of Tiiamat. The first time Nibiru was seen from space. The battle of the gods and the breakup of Tiiamat. Earth, half of Tiiamat, gets her water and gold. Kingu, Tiamat's giant satellite, becomes Earth's moon. Nibiru will continuously circle the sun. When Alalu came to Earth and touched down. When Alalu finds gold, Nibiru's fate is in his hands. The reverse side of Moorhen Collection Akkadian Tablet MC2894A. Alalu set his course for snowy Earth, but kept his destination a secret. Alalu went to off-limits places. No one had been there before, and no one at the Hammered Bracelet had tried to cross there. A secret from the start, Alalu's path has shown. It put the fate of Nibiru in his hands, and he devised a plan to make his kingship universal. He had to go into exile on Nibiru, but he risked death. In his plan, the risk was in the journey, and the reward was the eternal glory of success. Alalu looked at the heavens while flying like an eagle. Down below, Nibiru was a ball hanging in space. Its shape was beautiful, and its light lit up the sky. It was a considerable size, and when it burped, fire shot out. Its red, life-giving envelope was like a churning sea. The break was clear, like a dark wound in the middle of it. When he looked down again, the large hole had become a small tub. When he looked again, Nibiru's bright ball had become a small fruit. The next time he looked, Nibiru was gone from the vast dark sea. Alalu's heart was filled with regret, and fear held him by the hands. He made a choice to wait. Alalu thought about stopping in his tracks. Then he went back from being brave to make a decision. The chariot went 100 leagues, then 1,000 leagues, and then 10,000 leagues. Darkness was the darkest in the vast heavens, and the eyes of the stars far away were blinking. Alalu traveled more leagues, and then he saw something that made him very happy. In the vastness of the heavens, he was greeted by the messenger of the gods. Little Gaga, the one who shows the way, was welcomed by Alalu as he went around the circle. Before and after the celestial Antu, it would move with an uneven gait. It could face forward or backward because it had two faces. Alalu once thought that its first appearance was a good sign. He is welcomed by the gods of the sky. So was what he thought. Alalu rode his chariot along Gaga's path, which led to the second god of the heavens. Soon after, King Enshar gave it the name Celestial Antu. It was getting dark in the deep. She was as blue as clean water and the beginning of the upper waters. Alalu was amazed by how beautiful the scene was, so he kept a safe distance from the course. In the far distance, Antu's wife shimmered. She was the same size as Antu. His wife's double, An, was known for being a greenish blue. On its side, a dazzling host surrounded it, and they were given solid grounds. Alalu said goodbye to the two gods with love, but Gaga's path was still unclear. It was showing its old master, for whom it used to be a counselor, how the course was changing for Anshar, the highest priest of the heavens. By the speeding chariot, Alalu could see how Anshar was pulling him in. The chariot was beautiful, with bright rings of colors. He quickly turned his eyes away from Alalu and toward that which shows the way. He saw the family's bright star in the faraway heavens, which was very unusual. After a terrifying sight, the truth came out. A giant monster, following its destiny, cast a darkening shadow on the sun. Its creator, Kishar, ate it up. The event was scary, and Alalu thought it was a bad sign. It was too big for the giant Kishar, who was the leader of the firm planets. Storms swirled around it, hiding its face, and colored spots moved around on it. The god in the sky was surrounded by so many people that it was impossible to count them all. Their ways were hard to deal with, and they kept going back and forth. A spell was cast on Kishar, sending out divine lightning bolts. As Alalu watched, his path got off track. His direction was unclear, and his actions needed to be clarified. Then the deep darkness disappeared, and Kishar continued on his destiny to the circuit. As it slowly moved, the sun's light lifted its veil, revealing the one from the beginning. Joy in Alalu's heart was not long-lasting. He knew that beyond the fifth planet was the most dangerous place. The hammered bracelet was in charge. It was waiting to be broken. It was made by hammering together rocks and boulders. The rocks worked together like orphans without a mother. They went back and forth following an old plan. Their actions were disgusting, and their ways were hard to understand. Nibiru's probing chariots ate them up like hungry lions. The valuable gold that was needed to stay alive. They didn't want to move. Alalu's chariot was going full speed toward the hammered bracelet. The fierce boulders had to be bravely faced in close combat. Alalu stirred up the firestones in his chariot even more, and he drove that which shows the way with steady hands. The scary boulders next to the chariot moved forward like an enemy coming to attack. Alalu fired a death-dealing missile at them from the chariot. Then he fired another terror weapon at the enemy. As scared warriors, the boulders turned around, making way for Alalu. The hammered bracelet is like a spell that opens the door to the king. Even though Alalu was very deep and dark, the heavens were easy to see. He was not defeated by the bracelet's power. His mission did not end. In the distance, the sun's fiery ball, which was also its brilliance, was sending out rays of light toward Alalu. Before, it was a reddish-brown planet making its way around. It was the sixth of the gods of the sky. Alalu could only catch a glimpse of it as it moved quickly away from his path. The seventh object in the sky was the snow-colored earth. Alalu set his course toward the planet, and it was a very inviting place. Its catchy ball was more petite than Nibiru, and its catchy net was weaker than Nibiru. It had a thinner atmosphere than Nibiru, and clouds were swirling. Below, the earth is broken up into 3 regions. Snow white on top and bottom, with blue and brown in the middle. Alalu skillfully put the chariot's wings around the earth's ball to make a circle. In the middle, you could see both dry land and watery oceans. "I have reached my goal," he told the insides of Earth to pick up on the beam that went straight down. He shouted with excitement. Gold, a lot of gold, was shown by the beam. It was under a dark area and in the water as well. With his heart racing, Alalu decided to think about, will he crash and die if he lets his chariot fall on the dry land? Should he go straight into the water, where he might sink into oblivion? How will he stay alive? will he discover valuable gold. Alalu was not moving in the eagle's seat, and he gave the chariot to fate. The chariot moved faster because it was fully caught in the earth's net. Its spread wings lit up. The air around Earth was like an oven. Then the chariot started to shake, making a terrible thunder sound. The chariot crashed suddenly, and all of a sudden, it stopped. Alalu couldn't move because the shaking and crash had made him lose his mind. Then he opened his eyes and saw that he was still alive. He had won and made it to the planet of gold. Now, here's what we know about the earth and its gold. It tells about the beginning of time and how the gods in the sky made the world. When it all started in the above, there were no gods in the heavens, and in the below, Ki, there was no name for the firm ground. Apsu, their first leader, was all alone in the void. In the heights of the above, there were no celestial gods yet, and in the depths of the below there were no celestial gods either. Above and below were no gods yet, and no one knew what would happen. No reeds had grown yet, and there was no marshland. Apsu ruled the void all by himself. Then his winds mixed the waters of the beginning, and Apsu cast a divine and clever spell over the waters. He slept soundly in the deep of the void. Tiamat, the mother of everything, became his wife. She, indeed, was a mother from heaven and a watery beauty. Apsu's little Mumu then gave birth next to him, and he gave Tiamat a gift to bring to him as his messenger. Only she can have a gleaming metal, gold, that lasts forever. Apsu gave this beautiful gift to his wife. Then their waters mixed, and they had divine children to bring into the world. The Celestials were created in both male and female forms. Lamu and Lahamu were their given names. Apsu and Tiamat constructed a house below. Anshar and Kishar were created in the waters of the above when they were older and taller. They were taller than their older brothers. The two were created to be a celestial couple, and they had a son named An in the faraway heavens. He was their scion. Then Antu was brought out, who was An's equal and would be his wife. Their house was built on the outskirts of the upper waters. This is how, below and above, three heavenly couples were created in the depths. They were known as Apsu's family because Mumu and Tiamat were among them. Nibiru had yet to be seen. The earth had to be created first. The holy waters had become entangled, and even a hammered bracelet couldn't separate them. Not all of the circuits had been completed. The fates of the gods had yet to be determined. The Celestials got together, but they did strange things. Tiamat was upset and angry because she couldn't sleep on their journey to Apsu. She gathered a large crowd to march alongside her. She gave birth to a people who roared and fought against Apsu's sons. She had 11 of these babies. She made Kingu the group's firstborn and leader. When the gods of the sky learned about it, they convened a council meeting. She promoted Kingu to the rank of an An and gave him the order. They exchanged words. She placed a tablet of destiny on his chest, completing his circuit. She told her son Kingu to fight the gods, but who would stand up to Tiamat? Each god inquired of the other. No one from their group stepped forward, and no one was going into battle with a weapon. In the midst of the deep, a god was born. He was born in a location known as the Chamber of Fates. He was created by an artist and was the sun's son. The god quickly abandoned his family in the deep where he was born. He brought the seed of life, a gift from his creator. He set his sights on the void. He was looking for a new direction in his life. Antu was always on the lookout and was the first to spot the wandering celestial. His body was appealing and he shone. His walk was regal and the way he moved was magnificent. He was the most powerful of all the gods, and his circle was more extensive than theirs. Antu was the first to notice him, even though her child had never sucked at her breast. "Come join my family. Allow me to become your mother." She mentioned his name. She cast her net and made him feel at ease. His path was appropriate for the job. Her words made the newcomer proud, and her caring about him made him arrogant. His head doubled in size, and 4 things sprouted from his sides. He moved his lips in agreement, and a holy fire began to burn from them. He turned to face Antu, about to show An his face. When An saw him, he exclaimed, "My son, my son. You will be responsible for something, and a host will be your servant. Let your name be Nibiru, because crossing will be remembered forever." When Nibiru passed by, he bowed to him and turned his back. He cast his net for Nibiru's 4 servants and caught them. His hosts are the south wind, north wind, fast wind, and west wind. With a joyful heart, Anu told his ancestor Anshar about Nibiru. When Anshar's messenger Gaga heard this, he sent words of wisdom to An to assign a task to Nibiru's people. He told Gaga to say what was on his mind. That Tiamat, the woman who gave birth to us, now despises us. She has organized a group of people who want to fight, and she is furious. Her 11 warriors and children fight alongside her against the gods. She piled Kingu on top of them and scribbled a fate on his chest for no apparent reason. No god can withstand her poison. She has made us all fear her. Allow Nibiru to become our assailant. Let him defeat Tiamat and save our lives. Decide what will happen to him, and then let him face our formidable foe. He went to Gaga. He bowed before him and repeated Anshar's words. He told Nibiru what his ancestor said and what Gaga said to him. Nibiru was taken aback by the words. Based on what he had heard, he imagined the mother whose children would eat her alive. He addressed An and Gaga. Without saying anything, his heart told him to go fight Tiamat. He stated, "If I am to defeat Tiamat and save your lives, I must gather the gods and declare that my destiny is supreme. Let all the gods agree in council that I should be in charge and that they should obey my commands." When Lamu and Lahamu heard this, they cried out in agony. The request was strange, and no one knew what it meant. The fate-deciding gods communicated with one another, so they informed me. They were all in agreement that Nibiru would be their avenger, and that he would have a wonderful life. Nobody will be able to argue with your rules from now on. None of us gods will go beyond your boundaries, they told him. Nibiru, go be our avenger. They carved out a princely path for him to take to Tiamat. They blessed Nibiru and bestowed upon him powerful weapons. Anshar also brought the evil wind, the whirlwind, and the matchless wind from Nibiru. Kishar's body was engulfed in flames, and he held a net around Tiamat. As a result, Nibiru set a direct course for Tiamat and prepared for battle. Now, let's look at what happened during the celestial battle. How the earth got its lead, and what will happen to Nibiru. The Lord went out and did his assigned task. He turned to face the raging Tiamat and cast a spell. He put on the pulsar and the emitter to protect himself. His crowned head glowed with a terrifying light. The smiter was on his right and the repeller was on his left. Like a storm, he sent out his 7 helpers, the winds. He dashed toward Tiamat, who was enraged and yelling for a fight. The gods surrounded him, but they did not follow him. He was going forward to get a better look at Tiamat and her entourage, the plan devised by Kingu, the leader of her host. He lost his sense of direction, got off track, and didn't know what to do when he saw brave Kingu. Tiamat's group was completely surrounded, and they trembled in terror. Tiamat shook down to her roots and let out a mighty roar. She cast a spell and surrounded him with her charms on Nibiru. They both agreed on something, and the fight began. Tiamat and Nibiru came face to face and moved in opposite directions. As the battle approached, they decided to fight on their own. The Lord spread his net and threw it in an attempt to catch her. Tiamat screamed like she was insane in rage. She had gone insane. Nibiru pushed the evil wind from behind him in front of her and let it go. She attempted to swallow the evil wind, but could not close her mouth. The evil wind struck her in the stomach and entered her body. Her stomach was rumbling, her body was swollen, and her mouth was open wide. Nibiru pierced the hole with a sharp arrow of divine lightning. It entered her body through her stomach, it shattered, it tore into her womb and broke her heart. He took her last breath now that he had her under control. Nibiru examined Tiamat's lifeless body, which resembled a dead animal. The 11 employees of their deceased employer trembled in horror. They were caught in Nibiru's net and were unable to escape. Tiamat made Kingu the gang's leader, so he was one of them. He was chained and tethered to his dead mistress by the Lord. He took the tablets of destiny from Kingu, which he found repulsive. He signed the destine and tied it to his chest. The rest of Tiamat's troop became prisoners in his web. He trod on them, breaking them up into small bits. He connected them to his circuit and led them back to the course to turn around. Nibiru then fled the area where the combat had taken place, to the gods, who sent him to inform them of their victory. Nibiru passed on and Antu on his way to the abode in the deep. He circled Apsu, visiting Kisha and Ansha along the way. He proceeded to tell the others after Gaga came out to greet him. He next considered what would happen to Tiamat, who was no longer alive, and Kingu. Lord Nibiru returned to Tiamat, whom he had tamed. He found her, glanced at her dead body, and then walked away. A deception was devised to divide the monster in his heart. Then, like a muscle, he split her chest and lower torso into 2 halves. When the Lord trod on her backside, he severed her top half. He cut open her inner channels and marveled at her golden veins. He summoned the north wind, his ally, from his side. He instructed them to place the severed head of the wind in the empty area. The Nibiru wind then passed over Tiamat, sweeping over her raging waves. Nibiru fired a lightning bolt at North Wind. He transmitted a message, and Tiamat's head was taken away in a blaze of light to an unknown location. Kingu was also sent away with her, and the portion that had been severed was to be his friend. Nibiru then considered what would happen to the back part. He wanted it to be a combat trophy that would survive eternally. The battleground to be enshrined serves as a permanent reminder. He used his mace to sever the horse's back. They then strung them all together to form a hammered bracelet. He secured them as watchmen by locking them together, a firmament to keep the waters separate from the waters. Nibiru has created beautiful works of art by separating the upper waters above the firmament from the lower waters. The Lord then crossed the heavens to examine the area, taking measurements from Apsu's quarters to Gaga's dwelling. He then stared at the deep, Nibiru's rim and his birthplace. He paused for a moment to reflect before returning to the battleground, the firmament. He resented traveling through Apsu's country and remembering the sun's departed spouse. He focused his attention on Tiamat's wounded side and her upper body. Her treasure from the wounds, the life fluids, continued to flow. The rays of the sun were reflected in her golden veins. Then Nibiru realized his creator's birthright, the seed of life. He gave Tiamat the seed when he crushed and tore her apart. "With your warm beams you can heal the injured," he told Apsu. "Give the broken part new life in your family as your future daughter. Gather the rivers in one place and let the stable ground arise. Firm land, please call her Ki from now on." Apsu listened carefully when Nibiru stated, "Let the earth join my family, Ki, firm land of the below. Let earth be her name from now on." Apsu said, "Allow her to remain there by turning. I will provide her with healing rays throughout the day. Allow Kingu to be a creature of the night, and I will make him the moon for all time, Earth's friend." Nibiru, Apsu's words, were heard with delight. He studied the areas as he flew through the heavens. He bestowed permanent positions on the gods who raised him. None of their circuits were designed to be broken nor to fall short of each other. He strengthened the heavenly locks and gates on both his established sides. He chose an outermost residence that was sized beyond Gaga. He pleaded with Apsu to declare that the grand circuit would be his destiny. Every deity called out from their thrones, "Let Nibiru's power be surpassed. Let the sun's sun indeed be the brightest of the gods." Before leaving his apartments, Apsu gave his approval. "Nibiru, whose name means crossing, will preside over the union of heaven and earth. The gods will not pass through anything above or below him. He will occupy the center and serve as the god's shepherd. His circuit will always be one Shah. That is his destiny." This is the narrative of how the olden times began, as well as the period known as the Golden Era in the annals, and how expeditions from Nibiru were dispatched to Earth to acquire gold. It all started with Alalu's flight from Nibiru. Alalu infused much of what he had learned with extraordinary insight. His forefather Anshargal gathered excellent knowledge about the heavens and circuits. Anshar significantly improved their knowledge. Alalu received considerable knowledge from it. He talked with intelligent men and sought guidance from savants and commanders. Alalu had this knowledge because he had studied about the beginning. The gold on the hammered bracelet served as confirmation. The gold in Tiamat's hammered bracelet was the indicator. With thundering claps, Alalu triumphantly landed on the planet of gold in a chariot. He used a beam to scan the surroundings for his whereabouts. Hello, a chariot came down to Earth and landed on the edge of a vast marsh. He changed into a fish suit and an eagle helmet. He then unlocked Chariot's hatch, pausing to consider. The heavens were blue-white and the earth was dark. There was silence and no one to greet him. He stood alone in a strange world, perhaps from Nibiru, exiled forever. He lowered himself to the ground and trod on the dark-colored earth. Hills in the distance could be seen, and many forests nearby. He stepped into one of the wetlands in front of him. He trembled as he felt the chill of the marsh's waters. He returned to solid ground and found himself alone in an unfamiliar world. He was seized with thoughts, aching for his bride and children. Had he been exiled from Nibiru forever? He couldn't stop wondering about it. He quickly returned to the chariot with food and drink to keep himself alive. Then, thanks to profound sleep, he awoke from a deep nap. He couldn't remember how long he'd slept or what had woken him up. Outside, there was a dazzling light and an unseen glow on Nibiru. he took a tester-equipped pole from the chariot. It consumed the planet's air, proving its compatibility. After opening the chariot's hatch, he inhaled deeply. He inhaled again, then another, then another. The air in Ki was suitable. Alalu clasped his hands and sang a happy tune. He perished without a fish suit or an eagle helmet. The sun's rays were blinding, and the brightness outside was overwhelming. He returned to the chariot with an eye mask. He took up the sword he was carrying and the expensive sampler. He was on the dark-colored earth where he had stepped. He made his way toward the marshes, whose water was a dark greenish. Alalu took a pebble from the swamp's edge and tossed it into the area. As he moved across the marsh, he noticed the fish-filled streams below. He lowered the sampler into the swamp and considered the filthy waters. Alalu was devastated to find that the water was unsafe to drink. He pulled a U-turn and went for the hills away from the marshes. As he proceeded through the foliage, he passed through shrubs and trees. Because of the number of fruit-bearing plants, the area resembled an orchard. As the pleasant perfume of the fruit enticed Alalu, he placed it on his lips. The sweeter the flavor, the more delicious the fragrance. Alalu was delighted with joy. Alalu was walking away from the sun's rays toward the hills he had chosen. He felt moisture under his feet among the branches, indicating the presence of water nearby. He planned his route toward the dampness. There was a still pool of water and a pond in the woods. He lowered the sampler into the pond since it was safe to drink. Alalu couldn't stop himself from laughing. There was fruit and fish, and the water was drinkable. Alalu knelt, cupped his hands together, and drew water to his mouth. The water became cold, and the water from Nibiru had a distinct flavor. He drank again, then split in two, terrified. He heard a hissing sound and saw a writhing body alongside the pool. He grabbed his weapon and fired a flash of light toward the hissing. Both the moving and hissing stopped. Alalu approached the threat to examine it. Nibiru's sight has never been seen, but the bizarre sight of the lifeless creature with its slithered body lying immobile and lacking any hands or feet was that of a rope. It was a creature from another world. Its little head was ornamented with fierce eyes, and a lengthy tongue protruded from its mouth. Alalu reflected on himself. Was it the orchard's keeper? Was it the water's master? He doubted himself. He was carrying water in his flask and moving while keeping a lookout for the chariot. He also gathered some excellent fruits before setting off for the chariot. When he arrived at the chariot, the sun's brightness had faded, and darkness had taken its place. Alalu was taken aback by how short the day had been. An astonishing lightness was developing on the horizon from the direction of the marshes. A bright white ball was rapidly rising in the sky. He had now seen Kingu, Earth's mate. The planets and their circuits, the hammered bracelet, Ki, the Earth, and Kingu, its moon, were constructed and named. Alalu felt that beholding demanded one more truth. The secret to salvation rested in the gold to be discovered. If the stories from the beginning are true and Tiamat's golden veins were indeed swept away by the waves, the cut-off half of gold must be discovered in Ki. With shaking hands, Alalu the tester disassembled the chariot's pole. As they eagerly anticipated the approaching daybreak, the fish's outfit was put on with trembling hands. He walked out of the chariot and onto the marshes at first light. He waded the tester deeper into the waters he had introduced. As his heart thumped in his chest, he attentively examined its illuminated visage. The testers showed its findings in the water's composition, represented by symbols and numbers. "There is gold in the seas," the tester said, and Alalu's heart stopped. He lowered the tester back into the water, and the gold tester announced once more. Alalu took a step forward, wobbly on his legs, before continuing into the marshes. "Nibiru's destiny is now in my hands," declared Alalu proudly. He returned to the chariot, removed the fish disguise, and took his seat as commander. The tablets of destinies are aware of all the circuits. He connected to Nibiru's circuit to decide the direction. He summoned the speaker of words to deliver the words to Nibiru. Then he spoke the words of Nibiru. He was described as follows. In his words, the great Alalu addresses Anu on Nibiru. In another world, I discovered the gold of salvation. Nibiru's future is in my control. You must heed my requests. A synopsis of Mohen Collection Babylonian Tablet MC 17494b. Enlil, Anu's first son, suggests on-site verification. Alalu sends the message to Nibiru and reclaims the throne. Anu, taken aback, puts the subject to the royal council. Ea, Anu's firstborn and Alalu's son-in-law, is instead chosen. Ea skillfully equips the heavenly boat for the journey. The spacecraft's pilot Anzu is carrying 50 heroes. Despite the perils, the Nibirians exult at the sight of Earth. They splash down and wade ashore, guided by Alalu. Eridu, home away from home, is established in 7 days. The extraction of gold from the canals begins. Despite the small amount, Nibiru needs the delivery of Abgal, a pilot who chooses Alalu's spaceship for the mission. Inside the spaceship, there are illicit nuclear weapons. Ea and Abgal remove and hide the terror weapons. There are 3 tablets. Nibiru's future is in my control. You must heed my requests. Alalu spoke the words, projecting them from Nibiru to the dark-tinted earth. When the monarch Anu got the messages from Alalu, he was shocked, as were the wise men and counselors. They asked each other questions. Is Alalu still alive and well? Could he be from another planet? They were speaking in a skeptical tone. Wasn't he fleeing in the chariot to a safe haven on Nibiru? The chariot commanders were summoned, and the beamed words were considered. The words were spoken from outside the hammered bracelet, not from Nibiru. They discovered this and told King Anu about it. Anu was taken aback and had no idea what had transpired. "Let words of acknowledgement to Alalu be delivered to the gathered," he said. At the place of the celestial chariots, Alalu was given the following orders. Anu the king wishes his congratulations and expresses his joy upon knowing about your health. There was no reason for you to leave Nibiru because Anu has no ill will against you. Allow Nibiru to be saved if you have discovered the gold of salvation. When Anu Alalu's chariot spoke, Alalu reacted immediately. If I am to be your savior, I will save your lives. Gather the princes. My ancestry reveals itself to be supreme. Allow the commanders to choose me as their commander and submit to my power. Allow the council to appoint me as ruler, assuming Anu's throne. When people heard Alalu's claims regarding Nibiru, they were outraged. Counselors interrogated one another. Anu was deposed in what way? What is the condition of his asylum? Did he really find gold? What if Alalu's mischief conveys the story rather than the truth? They sought the wisdom and counsel of the wise and knowledgeable. I was Alalu's master, said the oldest first. He was speaking. He had listened to the beginning's instructions and the celestial battle lessons he was learning. If he had gone beyond the hammered bracelet, he would have known of the aquatic monster Tiamat and her golden veins. His safe sanctuary is the 7th planet from Earth. Before the assembly, a prince addressed the subject, claiming to be Anu's son and the son of Anu's wife, Antu. Enlil's name means Lord of the Command. He was issuing warnings. Alalu is deafeningly silent when discussing circumstances. He wreaked havoc, losing the throne in a single wrestling match. If Tiamat's gold had been discovered, the proof was necessary. Would it be sufficient to protect our environment? How is it transported to Nibiru via the hammered bracelet? Enlil, Anu's son, spoke in this manner, and many other questions were asked. Even though many responses and proof were required, everyone agreed. Alalu had received the assembly's message, and he needed to respond. Alalu weighed the importance of his statements and chose to divulge his secrets. He recounted his voyage and its perils. He extracted the tester's crystal internal organs and the sampler's crystal heart. The crystals and other discoveries were then placed in the speaker for broadcast. "Declare me king and obey my orders now that the proof has been revealed," he made a strong demand. The sages were stunned. He demolished the bracelet with weapons of terror and unleashed even more havoc on Nibiru with Alalu. As Nibiru circles that region, tragedies accumulate in Alalu. The kingship to be changed was a serious matter, and there was much concern in the council. Anu was king not only because of his ancestors, but also because of fair warfare. Anu's son spoke in front of the assembled princes. He was one of the sages recognized for his all-encompassing wisdom. He was known as Enki, he whose home is water, and he was a master of the secrets of the waterways. He was Anu's firstborn and married Domkina, Alalu's daughter. "Anu the king is my biological father, but Ea claims Alalu is my stepfather. My fiancé's purpose was to bring the two clans together. Let me be the one to bring peace to this battle. Allow me to represent Anu to Alalu and defend Alalu's discoveries. Let me arrive on Earth in a chariot. I will dig a water-only path through the bracelet." According to the sage's assessment, Alalu should reign as Earth's monarch. Let there be a second wrestling bout, and if Nibiru can save, who will rule? Allow it to make a decision. Let me retrieve the valuable gold from Earth's rivers and return it to Nibiru. The prince's advisors, sages, and commanders were ready for the struggle they had discovered as they listened in amazement to Ea's words. "Allow it to happen. Allow Ea to travel and the gold to be examined," Anu stated. "I'll fight Alalu once more. May the victor reign as Nibiru's monarch." Alalu received the ruling's words. After thinking, he welcomed Ea, his son by marriage, to Earth. Collecting gold from the seas, put it to the test for Nibiru's salvation and decide whether Anu or I shall rule the second wrestling throne. Okay then, Anu presided over the gathering. Enlil protested, but the king's word was final.